You're listening to
Catholic Sprouts,
the daily podcast for Catholic kids that strives to plant seeds of faith. Hey there, Sprouts. Today is Friday, May 3rd, 2019. This week on the Catholic Sprouts podcast, we have been looking at what it means to be an Easter people. And we have been doing this by looking at some of the great saints from our Catholic faith. We've already looked at St. Catherine of Siena and her remarkable life and reminded ourselves that literally anything is possible when we walk through life with Jesus Christ. We also looked at St. George, both the real St. George, who was a Christian martyr, and the legendary St. George, who slew the dragon, and reminded ourselves that we need not fear Satan because Jesus defeated him. We've also looked at St. Joseph the Worker and been reminded that there is dignity in work and that we can bring God to work with us, just like St. Joseph did. Yesterday, we looked at St. Zoe, who was a slave and early Christian martyr, and we were reminded that as an Easter people, we need not fear death because our true home is heaven. Today, we are going to look at two more saints, St. Philip and St. James. Both of these men were apostles, meaning they were part of Jesus' inner circle while he was on earth. Jesus called them specifically to be his followers. Jesus taught them. They witnessed the miracles that Jesus performed. And after Jesus rose and then ascended into heaven, they went out and preached the good news. Now, we don't know a lot about these two men in particular. In fact, we only hear about St. Philip in the Gospels twice. We hear right when Jesus calls him that St. Philip seems to be a pretty enthusiastic guy. Immediately after meeting Jesus, he runs to find his friend Nathanael and tell him that this is the person we've been waiting for. This is the Messiah. We also hear from him at the multiplication of loaves. He's the one that speaks up and tells Jesus that they don't have enough to feed the crowd. But of course, through the miracle, they did. We don't actually hear anything from St. James, and we don't even know why he's referred to as the Lesser. Now, of course, there were two apostles named James, so perhaps this means that this St. James was shorter or maybe younger. We do, however, know more about St. James in the later years as the early church was being established. We know that St. James the Apostle went on to be the first bishop of Jerusalem. Now, a bishop, of course, did the work that our bishops do today, meaning they're a shepherd of a larger group of churches. But the church at that point wasn't nearly as established as it is now. And the church also in Jerusalem was persecuted against. In fact, at the age of 96, after he had served as a bishop in Jerusalem for many decades, St. James was martyred. And he was martyred by being thrown off the top of the Jewish temple. Once he hit the ground, St. James was not dead. In fact, he was able to raise his head and repeat the words that Jesus Christ said on the cross. St. James said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they are doing." He forgave the people that were killing him, but then they came and clubbed him, and he actually did die. So St. James really did die with the same spirit as Jesus Christ. We also believe that before he died, St. James wrote the book of James in the Bible. So we have his words, which are a powerful testament to doing the works of God, and that faith always leads to works. And so, Sprouts, we are reminded by the works of St. Philip and St. James that faith in Jesus Christ always leads to evangelization. We need to be spreading this beautiful faith. And so, friends, my challenge for you is to pray through the intercession of St. Philip and St. James that you have the courage to preach the good news of Jesus Christ as well. That's it for Catholic Sprouts today. We'll be back tomorrow, but until then, continue to grow in your faith and truly sprout into the beautiful creation that God intended you to be. One final word to the grown-ups. Thank you so much for listening to the Catholic Sprouts podcast. I would like to invite you to join a special Facebook group just for those that listen to the Catholic Sprouts podcast. We will use this group to connect, to share resources around that week's theme, and simply celebrate raising future saints. To find the direct link to the Facebook group, simply check the notes for this podcast episode.